Welcome to Lincoln County Television. Today we're recording the 19th episode of the Vintage Racers Roundtable, sponsored by the Maine Vintage Race Car Association. I'm Ken Lane, sitting in for another Ken Minott today, and I'm here with my co-host Pete Silver from the New England Racing Hall of Fame and the Maine Racing Hall of Fame and the Unity Racing Hall of Fame. And Pete will introduce our guest today.
Yeah, we have three people here that are responsible for some of the most iconic history in Maine and New England racing, and that I think will stand the test of time forever. Ralph Nason, I guess everybody knows Ralph. Bobby Lindsay, and Ronnie Nason. These guys, everything they did was successful, but the two things that stand out in my mind, and this goes Bobby and Ralph, the iconic kit car days that dominated everything in New England for 3 or 4 years. And then when Ronnie became of age and kind of took over the helm, the iconic 3 250s in a row that'll probably never ever be matched. And I think there's a lot. I said 3 250s in a row.
You did.
You know?
I get 2s and 3s mixed up.
Well, I hope I borrow some money from you later. So, what we usually start the show out is by asking what put the wheel in your hand. And obviously Ralph is the elder statesman here and started it all for both of these guys.
So, I took a job selling Wynn's friction proofing, 64 or 5 or something like that. And the guy that was kind of show me the ropes, Dave Libby from Portland, he was a Wynn's guy, said, if you got any racetracks in your area, you ought to go over there. And he says, because them guys got poor radiators and they need all the products, and you can sell some fan belts and some other stuff. So I said to a friend of mine that had a gas station, one of my customers, he had a mobile station in Bangor, Wayne Philbrook, his name is. And I said, I'm going down to Unity this week, you want to go? Oh, yeah, let's go. So anyway, so he piled in with me and away we went.
About 1965 probably?
Yeah, 63 or 4 or something like that.
geez.
64. Yeah, probably 64. I didn't have, very shortly after I was doing wins, I had a 65 Ford Econoline, which was the year. And they belonged to Davis Distributing Company, and I rented it. And anyway, so had to be probably 64 and maybe 65. But anyway, so Wayne and I went to the race, and we're watching the races and talking back and forth. And Wayne's a big, rugged guy, and and he's taking his shit from anybody.
Yeah.
And so we're watching the races and this and that, and he says, "Boy, that looks like fun." And I said, "Yeah, that does look like fun." I said, "But it's kind of, I don't know." Anyway, so we watched the races. We didn't sell any radiator stuff. We didn't do any business. But that week, I'm in his place. I stopped in there and gassed up before I made my rounds. And he says, "What do you think about buying one of them? Well, let's get us a car." And I said, "That's weird you'd say that because I've been thinking the same thing." And I said, "So we need to make up how we're going to do it, so that you know and I know, so that there ain't any problems there." He says, "Okay, I'll drive it." And I said, "Good, that's one problem I ain't got to worry about." So I said, "So you're the driver." And I said, "We're going to do this 50-50 and what have you." So, and I had, the week before when I was there was a 41 Ford Coupe or a 40 Ford Coupe guy he had a for sale sign on it. And it was pretty cheap. I'm going to say it was $250 running, so which was cheap. Maybe not then, it wasn't cheap, but anyhow, the guy's name was Arthur Richards, and he was from Bradford.
I know that name.
Yeah, well, he has a son, Arthur Richards Jr., that races.
Still messing with it.
And he's still there. He messes around with it, but Ron is like 60, so this guy is like 60. So they're not kids, And so anyway, I approached Arthur and wound up buying it. So he says, "I'll bring it to Unity next week, and you guys can take it." So we brought it there, and so Wayne, he gets all piled up, and he piles in and puts the belts on. And he goes out there on the racetrack, and I said, Wayne, when he came in, he said, how'd that look? And I said, well, pretty good, but you ain't going fast enough. Because, I mean, like, every 3 laps, some guy's going to pass you. You know, you ain't going fast enough. Well, get it in a
heat race.
gear or something.
In a heat race?
Huh?
In the
No, that was just practice.
Oh.
And so he went in the heat race after that, and he had, you know, nothing against him because it wasn't running right, and it didn't do anything, you know. And Arthur Richards was racing it before, and it wasn't going anywhere, you know. So we went about 3 weeks, and I said to him, I said, this isn't working because Nancy's father and I have been working on that thing up here in Newburgh, and we take that thing in the crossroads. It was a dirt road, the Chapman Road. But he got out in that distributor and he says, it's got 2 sets of points. And one of them was closed right out, and this and that, so it didn't run right. And he tinkered on that, and Bobby knows, he was a perfectionist. And I'd go in there on that thing and I'd get that thing going in that crossroad, and I'd tell you, it'd scare you, it'd go so goddamn fast. I mean, like, it wouldn't stop fishtailing, and it was leaving black marks on the dirt road. And I said, wow. So anyway, is about 3 weeks out, I said, that's enough. I said to Wayne, I said, we're gonna make a change because he says, I'm ready to make a change because I ain't doing anything. And I said, okay. Well, I said, I'll pile, and I piled in it. I borrowed a helmet and I piled in it. And Joe Lewis, the pit steward, come over and he says, this is your 3rd week. You're starting on a pole. And I said, no way. No poles, no. Starting last. I said, and I had quite a lot of argument with me because he was bound on start. And I said, no. Because that was his rule. Car's there after 3 weeks.
I remember those days, yeah.
Gets in the point, so, but anyway, so I started on the back. And this was, and I can remember this to this day, and probably if you go back in your memory, and you will remember, because you never get into these things, but is I get in that thing, and I couldn't stop my foot from shaking on the gas pedal.
You and I had this conversation. I was so thankful you said that because
Yeah.
the first night I drove, I came in the pits after practice, and they said, "What's wrong with the motor?" I said, "Nothing. That's my foot."
and so anyway, I'm going around there, and I'm on the back, and my foot is jumping and shaking so goddamn bad. And I said, and I don't know how come the other foot wasn't jumping and shaking, but just that one on the gas pedal. And they threw the green flag. And when that green flag came out, that stopped jumping. Just stopped. I was just occupied, I guess. Anyway,
Yeah.
I went around there, and I don't know, probably 10 laps or whatever it was. And that was in 1965 because it was hot top.
Yeah, that's
the year they
Oh,
hot
it
top.
was.
Yeah, and I never raced on Unity in the dirt.
See, I thought you saw it on the dirt. I'm glad you said
Yeah,
that.
and so anyway, I passed this, I don't know, pretty much half of them, and they weren't going very fast either, and I didn't think I was either. But I came in the pit, and Lane said, he was excited, he said, wow, you did, great, that's, wow, you know, I really didn't do anything, but I got that stopped shaking the gas pedal. And so anyhow, we went back out later on in another race and finished like about the same. Passed 4 or 5 cars, I was tickled. And so that week, I think we probably finished 12th or 15th in the feature. Because it was like usually 25 or 28 cars in the damn feature, you know, it was a cheap class and whatever. The next week, I worked on that thing almost every single night until midnight. And I couldn't wait for the weekend.
Yeah.
And I that's when I was possessed with that. And I never stopped looking back after that.
That only lasted about 60 years.
Yeah, 60 years. And lots of things came along. Bob came along, and he was in the same thing of he wanted to go racing with us, and
I don't know if it lasted 60 years because it's been 60.
Yeah,
so
that's probably what I should have
if
said.
you want to go when we're ready to head home, he drove us down here. So if you're ready,
I'm good.
you don't bullshit.
I'm glad. I don't know how many. the people, our audience, and I'm glad we started there because I don't know how many people know that you raced the old coupes.
Oh, yeah, and we
And I-
raced those quite a long time, and then the track decided to make a change from these old coupes into modern type cars, which was full body cars, and 2 or 3 years. I raced them things, and I was a guy, and I don't, was you with me when we built the dual wheels for the front
Oh, yeah.
and the back? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And
we
because
put water
we
in
just
the
needed
tire.
more tire, and we didn't have more tire to buy, and no money. And so we got our heads together and says, "Oh, let's do this." We flipped the rims around, and we welded 2 rims together, and put a tire on this one and a tire on
I
this
remember
one.
seeing that.
Now I have 2
Yeah,
tires.
yeah.
And I did something else in there weird too.
So,
And but anyway, made it for the front, and didn't get them just right. They did bounce a little, but we did a lot of ingenuity stuff.
well, trying to
Yeah.
keep up.
What about
Yeah.
putting water in the tire?
Yeah, we filled the left rear tire full of water.
I'm not sure how many people are gonna believe you when you say you wanted somebody else to drive after watching your career, but
Oh yeah, no, and that was true. I didn't want to do it, and I wasn't planning on it. I actually had a little thing there. Is my wife was not a positive fact about me racing cars, and and I kind of had to make her a promise. And before this started that deal, I said I will never take anything from you or the kids
yeah.
for money, for household or anything else, and put into that thing. I never will do it. And I never did. And I
pretty
went and
important.
found sponsorship and worked extra hard to make extra or whatever and everything else. So I always did that.
Might
So,
have been a little gray area there for a while.
oh, yeah, different stuff. Yeah.
I'm guessing.
Yes.
But you never wanted for anything.
No.
Nope. And neither did your brother and neither did your sister.
Unless it was something they shouldn't have.
Oh, yeah. Which there was a lot of that.
Yeah, I bet. So Bobby, I know you lived close when
Yeah.
he was courting
Yeah.
Nancy. So is that where did you guys know each other before then, or were you car guys around each other before then?
No, I got to know him through his father-in-law because I was friends with him. I used to hunt and fish with his father-in-law. So that's how I got to know him.
So are you there with the coupe, or are you the next deal?
No, I was there with the coupe. In fact, I took it out to practice one day. There used to be a bridge between the pit and the track. And I was going around there and thought I was going like hell, which I guess I was going right along.
Too fast.
Wilson knew him, went up on the inside of me, scared me, and I yanked the wheel and took the bridge out.
Who's that?
That was on the back structure. with
Took
the
it right
bridge.
in half.
Wilson, you? Did you say?
Yeah,
He scare a lot of people.
Yeah, Wilson knew, yeah.
But you were already
He was there.
messing with automobiles and mechanics. That's what
I
you,
built my first engine when I was 12 years old.
Well, Ken said that you had one rod in it that was too long, and you just kept putting head gaskets on it until it
Yeah, I
turned
did.
over
Yeah.
and
She
started.
ran, not good,
Ran.
but she ran. Put her in the vehicle and drove her up and down the dirt road that they've done.
So you run the coupe, and then Bob, they move along to another division. Now you haven't been to Unity at this point in a big car, and you show up with this '56 Ford to see him one day, and you take that and go to Bangor.
No, that was like, he bought this fish. Where did you buy it?
Yeah, I bought it was a Southern car.
Yeah, it was a nice car.
Just like brand new.
Yeah, it was a nice car. I had a golf station in Hampton then.
Yeah.
He drives in the dooryard, gets some gas and whatever, and I said, "Where'd you get that, Bob?" And he said, "Whatever." I said, "Geez, that make a good race car." And he said, "Well, let's get at it." And I said, "Really?" And he said, "Well, the race was whatever,
walk
tonight,
home.
That's how it was back then.
And so we,
You know.
he drove it in the bay, in the gas station, in the garage. We took the headlights out, rolled the windows down, took the taillights out, and we went to Bangor that night. Did we win?
We won.
We won.
Was that your first win?
First win, like in that car, that '56 car.
Did you ever win in the coupes? Did you ever get there in the coupes to the front? Probably got close.
Yes, we did, but not with any success
Yeah.
because there was the other guys that were running them coupes had been running them for years.
Yeah, you went from 0 to that all
Right,
at once.
there's
That's a
zero
lot
to
to
that,
take
and
on.
like
Yeah.
you take Al Robinson and Prescott Robinson, and there was like tons of guys that had been doing this. Oh, I had another professional driver guy drive the coupe for us too, and before I got in, his name was Danny Simons.
I remember you
And
said
he
that.
drove it and he drove it 2 or 3 times, and I said, this thing goes like a rocket, and I'm gonna drive it, and I did. And that's what hooked me. But, those coupes, I did that for I think a couple of years. Then Nolte changed the rules to full-size cars, and I had a bunch of them. We had that red '56 Mercury with that we got. Last I knew, it was down behind the farm across from the town hall.
It's
down
still
back
there.
there.
So,
It's still there.
I don't remember that. I remember the
Yeah,
big
it's a red
Ford.
Mercury, '55 Mercury. I had that, and
It says Herb on the side of it.
huh?
It says Herb on the side of it.
Herb, yeah, that would be Herbie.
Herbie Moon.
Herbie
ended up.
Moon,
So
because he wound up with it afterwards.
Where did you go
And-
with that car? To Bangor?
Yep, we
And-
went to Bangor with that. We went to Unity with that too.
Did you race mostly at Bangor in those early days?
Early days, and then we started racing. I didn't race Unity hardly until '65, because that was the first year it was hot top.
Yeah.
That's when we started. And then we had a couple of years going there and going to Bangor. Bangor didn't open until
67.
'67, right?
Yeah, pretty sure
Yeah,
67.
okay. So I had 2 years that I raced in Unity before we went over there.
So was that like a class with the slick on the right front? Or was
No,
it just
that was the
4
class
street
with
tires
4 tires like that, but then they
Yeah.
went to a safety hub and a
on the
slick
right
on the
front?
front.
Yeah.
We did all that, and but I had a bunch of them cars, and I built a bunch. And built one a '57 Chevy up to Tony Sven's in Bury Shell.
What color was that car?
Maroon, I think.
Yeah, I think I remember
maroon
that.
or red. Yeah.
I think I remember. That's
Yeah,
when I
that would
first
go like a
remember
son of
you
a-
in
yeah.
that car.
And I learned something. I don't know how I learned it because my head's real hard. But I learned that when we put that car together on Tony's, he built an old 283 that had 20 million miles on it. And he put some rings in it, put the heads on it, and stuck it in there. It was a 283. And I'm working around the back, and I said, I'm going to do something to this. And I don't know where I got it from, but anyhow, I took the cutting torch and I put the heat to the right rear spring, leaf spring of that. And I curled that spring like that. So that when you set that thing down, that thing would set down like that. But you could go along and pick that right rear up with your hands.
That was the big deal
That
back in
was the
those
wedge
days. You
deal,
could get
right?
that off the ground, you had
Oh,
enough
yeah,
weight in
well,
your car.
I'm telling you right
Yeah.
now, we hit the next race with it, and we was going with that thing.
That's with the 57 Chevy?
57 Chevy. And we won a ton of races. The end of that year, I sold it to Buster Grover. He won 2 Wisconsin championships with that car.
He was hell in that car. I
yeah, he
remember
was
him
hell
driving
in
it.
the thing.
Yeah,
And,
I remember him in that 57
Yeah,
Chevy.
well, that's where he got it from. And it wasn't anything real special. And it was the same old 283 motor.
Yeah.
And I had a bunch of other old cars, and finally got to the point where I was racing. What did I have when Reggie wanted to change us to a Dodge?
Chevrolet, I think.
Chevrolet,
I think
yeah.
it's when.
You had all
Chevelle.
Chevrolets. You had 2 different
Chevrolet.
Chevelles,
Yeah, 2
I
different
think.
Chevelles, yeah.
Yes,
And they was all good, and they was all fast.
The first one I remember was the
And
red
it had
one.
the short trunk, because we shot in it.
And it had the side pipe. It had the
Yeah,
headers,
yeah, headers out the side.
like a road race car there,
Yeah.
so they wouldn't be caught under.
Kenny Porter had that car. Kenny Porter lived right up the road from where we used to be.
That was the
And,
car that was on its roof
yeah.
in turn 3 in Oxford, I believe.
Yeah, I think so.
Was
Yeah.
was a Chevelle, square bodied Chevelle.
yeah.
Yeah.
So how old are you at this point? Are you
Well,
even
that-
here?
Well, that Chevelle would have been. It was a square Chevelle, so it had to have been a '66. So it might have been 1969 or 70.
Could have been, yeah.
So-
Probably was
It
a
had to been
64
around there.
Yeah.
Chevelle.
It
So
had to
I
been
was
around.
5 years old,
Yeah.
maybe at best.
Yeah.
There's
Kenny
70
Porter drove in a
72 and
in a
73.
store
He
in
was
Newburgh.
Chevelle.
and I said, where'd you get that? And he says, I just bought that. And I said, just that make a nice race car. Same deal. He says, let's get started. And we rolled it in the garage, and we made a race car out of that Chevelle.
So you guys been together since
Forever.
the early 60s.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And he could do more with less in a car than anybody else at that racetrack.
That's basically what it took in that era,
That's
in
what it
particular, because
took.
you couldn't get on the phone and buy.
No, you didn't have the money.
No, you had to try.
Had no money.
Yeah, and it's all
Had to build it.
Good
you know.
point, Ronnie. It's trial and error at that point
Yeah.
because the knowledge,
Yeah.
nobody's figured it
Yeah.
all out.
And,
Yeah.
and we tried a lot of different things, and we got tangled up with this kid here, and he was a mathematician. He was what, when you started coming around, 14,
14,
15?
yeah.
So I'm glad you brought that up because
Yeah.
I had a note. I started to write a note. How did that come about? Just living in the same neighborhood as
Yep,
Ralph and
yep,
everybody?
coming in the store. His father used to stop in my store every night on the way home, and he'd buy him a couple of bottles of beer and go home. And then he started hanging around. He had a brother
Yeah.
and a buddy, Noel, and the three of them would start hanging around, and they'd tinker on these cars, and we'd go here and there. They'd go with us and everything else. But this guy was like, there's got to be something else here that we could understand to make this work different. That was his.
Yeah, I'd say that,
That
moved
was
you
his
forward a little
thesis.
bit.
Was there's got to be something here, mathematically, that I can make work to make this car work better. That's like an engineer, but it's like a mathematical engineer. And we tried all kinds of different things, and but in reality, at that time, spring rates was unheard of, didn't
No.
we? Okay, and we didn't know any of this figure stuff. But it's all figures now. It's all that
Oh,
stuff
yeah.
now. And he was at the front at 14 years old.
Pretty
and,
impressive.
You know, when he was still going to school. And but we tried different stuff and whatever, and but he was way ahead of his time because the mathematics hadn't got into racing then. And you know, so but years later it did, and now you know you got whatever spring rates and shock rates and all kinds of stuff. It's so technical. And,
Yeah, and if you get the money, somebody will
yeah,
give you the
that's
knowledge.
right.
So Bob, you dabbled in racing a little bit too. Ron, I'm going to get you, but you're the youngest guy on the block, so you end up being last.
Yeah.
Yeah, I run a street stock at 90. Well, you're in the end 90.
Well, you won a race or so.
Oh, you
Oh,
won
one.
half a dozen?
I don't know how many I won, but I have no idea. Really, I don't
won a
remember.
mechanics
I know I
race?
won 3 or 4. I used to start last in Bangor because I was a high point guy, and there was 36 cars. Had
Christ, yeah.
15 green flag laps. I didn't count the yellows. Well, I had to get 2 or 3 every lap, and I did. If I couldn't go around them, I moved them.
So is this why you're still helping Ralph in racing, or is this when
he
Ralph
was-
is?
I was gone then
He
when
was-
you had that.
He was
Okay.
gone at that time. I think he
I
was
was-
running Spud, I think.
Yeah, I ran Nolte, I mean, spotted.
I want to get back to that too. So when you know, I mention it to Ralph now and then, is when you finally come on the scene. You know, my deal when it comes to you is, I came home, I don't know, for a couple of weeks for a 250, and you'd bought Gilly's car, and the 3 of us and Wayne, they got killed at Wiscasset.
Oh, Bruce Kane.
Bruce Kane.
Bruce Kane, yeah.
The 4 of us, both those cars, and the 4 of us went to Wiscasset. And the next thing I know, you're still young, you're dabbling, and the next thing I know, you're doing everything.
Well,
I mean,
I know a lot of years combined there. It's pretty hard to, pick them all out. But if you're gonna race and you wasn't paying for something done, you had to figure it out.
okay, well, that brings me to the next question, and I think this is big. I'm very impressed with this because this is what it takes going forward. At some point, I mean, you're having all kinds of success by now, or you've had.
Yeah.
What made you, the 2 of you, decide that you're going to be the motor builder?
Because there was nobody else
Nobody
to do
else
it.
to do it.
Okay.
And I mean, you
wouldn't
can't. There's only one set of hands you can rely on, and
Good
you know
point.
they're
Yeah,
your
great
own.
Okay, that's
I
well
mean,
said.
not that people can't do the job, but to, make it clear in your mind, this is how you got to do it.
So you guys
I've
are
had a
ta-
lot of people that I've worked with, and they've done great work, and showed me a hell of a lot.
Well, you must have been a pretty good student.
But I think
You
I
was,
showed
yeah.
myself what to do wrong first
Well, that
before
makes
you'd
sense.
ever
I
get
mean,
it
I think
right.
we all do
I
that.
mean, yeah, that's the way it is.
So you go spend some time around Bob Bailey?
I used to go to Bob's all the time because he was closest engine shop with a dyno, and
A great guy to boot. Too.
a great guy to boot,
Yeah.
and could take me and my ways, because my ways and his ways were damn close.
I won't touch that one. I'll just
That's
keep
right.
moving.
No, I mean, we just need to get it done, you know, the
Yeah.
job done the best we can without spending tons of money. Because we still had to race, but if you had to run on a bigger budget, it wasn't going to happen.
I was wondering how that relationship started with Bob, but I can remember in the early years, Louis hauled you to Martinsville. You
Martinsville.
I guess you
Yep.
didn't think you had enough brakes for there at
No
the time or
brakes,
something.
yes, and
So-
we had enough brake, but not enough knowledge how to work them.
Well, that place will bring that out.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Big time.
right.
Yeah, well,
3
on
laps,
a Dodge,
Yeah.
it would bring it out in the pace lap, I
Yeah,
think.
right.
And I weren't very old, but I was there.
Yeah.
My first version of ever seeing red dirt.
Yeah.
Oh,
right,
Jesus, yeah.
It's like, what the hell?
So what do you make contact with Bob Bailey? You're talking about deciding to build motors, and can I come spend some time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Bob was doing his own thing. At the time that I really was there a lot, he was involved with the Wagner V6.
Yeah.
And him and Kyle Wagner was pretty tight.
Very tight,
You know,
you're right.
especially
Yes.
for the New England.
Yes.
And, you know, so Bob would be building a V6 at the time. And we never ran a V6 because we was racing Dodge stuff. There wasn't nothing out there,
Yeah.
which I'm glad. But you know, if I didn't know what I was doing, Bob would help. You know, when it was time to get it on the dyno, I could have it all done and ready, and he'd fire it up. And
So you actually worked, okay. See, I didn't know if you were
worked
up
right
in
there
the
with it.
Quonset hut building. No, you're at Bob High Torque Racing Engines building your motors.
just part time. Either way,
Well, still,
or
that's-
finish it at my place and take it down and put it on the dyno. It's, you know, it all depends on, because we still had to race next weekend.
Yeah.
You know, no matter what. You know, time
pretty
frame was short.
Pretty gracious of him.
Yeah.
So now, I believe you go spend some time with Joey Arrington too, don't you?
We bought some engines and some parts from Joey, and learned a lot from Joey too, Dodge stuff, because
Yeah, of course.
that's the Dodge man.
And that's how you, yeah. That,
And
just,
and not being funny, but the Dodge thing, you know, was, I think it would have been a lot better deal if we was a drag racer.
oh yeah.
Because the Dodge
They
stuff.
specialized in drag racing.
Yeah, and they was
specialized, yeah.
strong, and they was strong oval track racing. But between the oil system problems for circle track racing and the valve train shit that was just impossible to go run 3 hours.
Yeah.
You know, it's just a lot of work. It was,
Well, yeah,
it
by
was
now you're-
very hard on.
You're like doing what
the
we're
brain.
doing when we leave here. There's no 35 lap features.
No.
Everything you're doing is 100 lap
That's
plus.
right,
So
right.
now all of a sudden,
Gotta
all the
live.
weaknesses show up
Right.
on every aspect of the
Right,
car,
right.
actually.
Yeah. When
Yeah.
we was first running them Dodges, Bob was putting bearings in every single week.
Just
Every
as a precaution.
Rod bearings.
8 hours put a set of rod bearings
Yeah.
and main bearings in, and
Yeah.
without taking the motor out.
Just lifting the crank up, loosening
Well,
the
yeah,
mains
just
up.
roll them
That
out.
was the early
Yeah.
start of the
Yeah.
Dodges.
It took so long because you had to take the headers off, and that was about a 6-hour
Work,
job.
yeah,
Take
that
them
was
out, put them
terrible.
back on. There's no room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And their bearings wouldn't last more than 100 laps at the most. You might
at the
get
most.
two 35 lap
Yeah,
races out of
right.
them, but because we usually ran 235.
Are you talking about the Duster now?
Yeah.
The Dart?
Yeah.
Yeah, the very early
Yeah.
beginnings.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
It was-
can
that
remember how
was-
fast that car was, but there was issues a lot.
Always issues.
Yeah, the issue
Yeah.
was the motor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, but they was working with basically stock stuff.
Yes.
And they wouldn't let you,
Until a few years later, when
Wouldn't
all
let
that
us change the
W2
oil
stuff
filter.
comes
Right.
out.
they
But
wouldn't
the
let us
oil
rebuild
system
an
in the
oil
block
pan.
was what was killing those.
So with all this knowledge that you've gained now, knowing that the Dodge is such a hill to climb, what possesses you to go back to it?
I don't know. It wasn't really a choice at that time. Who would ever thought?
Yeah.
You know, not that I have anything against Chevrolet, because that's a pretty easy way to go.
Well, I remember you in the Chevrolet. I can remember you were testing one time at Unity, and I was home. You and Stan. I came up and drove a Thunderbird you had
Yeah.
in practice, and obviously the Dodge.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we have no allegiance, but we,
No.
you know, the Dodge.
But we had a lot of help from Chrysler after we started winning races with them.
With the kit car.
Yeah, and we got a
imagine,
lot of help,
Jesus.
like, but not what we needed, but enough to keep us there.
Yeah.
Like we had an engine that we got from Petty's, and it never missed a beat. I don't know whatever became of it, you know? I don't know if they ever blew it up.
I don't think so.
I don't know, but anyway, it never had a lot of power, but it stayed with us.
Well,
And you
what
could win
was the
races.
Dodge motor at that time that throwed the counterweights out of it in the garage? That was
That was
amazing.
a spur of my
That was
horn.
made by Don White, Keokuk, Iowa. And that was a free race engine from Chrysler.
That was a pretty big name there at
Yes,
one time,
yeah,
that
Don
Don
White,
White
yeah.
guy.
Yeah, but
a
it
ton of
fired it
U-
in the garage
USAC
in the
guy.
store in Newburgh,
Yeah.
and it throwed the Mallory
Yeah,
out
I
of the
remember he told me
crankshaft
that.
Yeah, unbelievable.
because
And
it
Bob, we
wasn't.
got it in there,
I can remember
got
that.
it all tuned up, and he's doing the timing, and he checked it all out. And the last punch, he went like that with the throttle. She just
Exploded.
God,
exploded.
you guys
Everything come down the bottom.
You guys must have wanted to just kneel
Like,
down
sit
and
right
cry,
down
I
and
would
cry. We
imagine.
could have cried.
Well, wasn't the deal the Mallory was drilled into
No,
the
what they
counterweight
did-
straight in?
They drilled a straight hole in the crank counterweight, and they put the Mallory in, which was the same size. It wasn't pressed. But then they welded a steel plate over it.
Oh,
A
the
steel
cast
That's
scarf
weird. I
with
never
a
Cast
saw
iron
steel
that.
rod on a
With
cast iron
centrifugal
crank.
force, like
Yeah,
in
just
spin
adding
out.
That's-
offset
Right.
weight there. I
And
would
when
think.
it came apart, you took the pan down, looked it all over. His scarf is hung off like this, and all the Mallory fell out. And all the pieces went everywhere, and the crank broke in half, and everything came down through the oil.
Could have
pan.
thrown one of them right through the garage.
Yeah, terrible. Yeah, what a mess. And that almost killed us on Chrysler. It really did. But,
Did you have something to put in? I mean, if you guys are putting a motor in,
we
it must
must
be
have put something in. because
Yeah,
we didn't
another
stop.
360 or a 318
Yeah.
out of the junkyard. How
Yeah.
many motors did you, and this just goes by probably more stories than my memory, how many engines did you take the intake manifold off and vacuum out the garbage? And
One of
put
them down
your
in Winterport
intake
was
on
full
it?
of paint.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we get them out of the junkyard and
Yeah.
put them in that car, and
Would you just change the oil
it
pan
just
on
went
or
so
something?
good. You didn't.
Yeah.
Pump.
It
Yeah.
looked like it had 1,000,000 horsepower, but he was driving it in the corner
that-
5 car lengths
Yeah.
faster
Yeah.
and stepping
Oh,
on the
yeah.
gas.
Peter knows
Burnt
how
the
that
gas and
looked
throttled her right back
from
to
the
the
back.
floor.
Yeah, I was unfortunate. I was part. I always remember. Speaking of that car race, the first month it was so-so.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah,
a
it
top
was
10
like-
car. Definitely
yeah.
wasn't a top 3.
Yeah.
And I can remember one of the few days I came up there early. I wanted to get on the racetrack, and you were there with the
Yeah.
Chrysler engineers. And 4 hours later, it was all over for the rest of us for about 2 years there or so.
Yeah, yeah. It was like, and the only thing that they did, the only thing we learned from them, and it fixed it. We went back to the shop and made some spring things,
Like a
so
spring
that
wrap
the
or
springs
something?
didn't wrap up.
Yeah.
Stop the springs from wrapping up. 'Cause what was going on? The springs would wrap up like this on the power, and you'd let off like this and pull the drive shaft out of it, and break the
Jesus
tranny, and do all kinds of. And then, so Bill Serber, he was the engineer for Chrysler. He says, "I think you got to build some traction bars." So he gave us a couple of pitches, and we didn't do it by the pitches because we didn't have room. So we put it on the bottom and went to the back, and what have you. But that stopped it.
Yeah.
And
That was the whole problem with that car
that was
the
the whole
previous
and,
month when
and
you
then,
just
then
got it.
I had to learn how to drive it after different than that, because now this thing going into the turn, if you let off the gas, it would change ends. So you had to keep gas on and use the brake to get in the corner with power on, because and this car I got still in the garage, that likes that. It likes power
Is
on.
that real?
with the brake.
They both. Was that car real soft in the rear too?
Yes.
No, but that's a whole different bird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but that
You
car likes
know,
that.
you know as well as I do, when a car's pushing, when you can get back to the gas, just that first initial, that front end is gone, that
Yeah.
push is gone, and so if you could stay on the gas,
It don't push.
you're gonna have a feel for it.
I never. When I was over at Prescott Racing, you had an old Camaro and told me to come get it and mess with it.
Yeah.
You don't even remember? I don't know what it was. We squared some stuff up in the rear, and we went and tested it a couple times. It went pretty good, actually. But that was the first car I'd ever driven that did what you just said. I let off, and it took my breath away.
Yeah. Yeah.
I said, "What?" I hadn't even touched the brakes. Sometimes if you got too much rear
right,
brake,
yeah.
Right.
but I don't know what made me do it. I just laid it on the floorboard,
Yeah.
And it basically did just what you said
Just
and what
what
you
it'll
said.
do. It'll
It just-
turn then.
Yeah.
Geez, I don't know what car that would have been.
But I've
It
had
was a
like
3-link.
4 or 5 race cars over the years that were peculiar that way. And one of them was that Leo Lever car.
Oh my God.
That was a steering
was it?
and signature.
Tell us
on
about
I
that.
told, that was the car that Leo Lever car was the guy from down this way. He worked for
Yeah,
Mobile
yeah,
Oil.
Leo
truck
Lever.
driver.
Yeah, Leo
Yeah.
Lever worked
Dave
for the oil
Kimball
company.
drove the thing, and he couldn't ever get him to the racetrack with it.
Russ
And
Nutting built it.
Russ Nutting,
Put a
that,
clip
no,
on it.
that car was,
The
I
NASCAR
hate to
car.
take over this show, but that car, I know.
Go ahead, Ronnie, go ahead.
Yeah,
That car was a Bush North car
Yep.
that McCabe had,
there you go.
which must have been a Laughlin or
Levitt. He bought some Levitt and Latat stuff. He had all that stuff.
this
yeah.
was quite a while ago. This car was old, but Russ Nutting put a Chevelle snout on it, and this Leo Lever ended up with it, and it was old, and it was scary.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you could use a tetanus shot really to get near
Get around it,
You
yeah.
know, it had coilovers, but they was not right for the era. You know, it was all
It had coilover springs in the
had
back.
coilovers in the back.
Yeah, but
which-
no shock in them.
yeah,
I've seen
yeah,
that.
it was kind of.
I don't know why
funky
that
deal.
got popular. Somewhere
worked.
that was popular. I think they put them behind
But
the rear
anyway,
end or
to
something.
finish this story about this Leo, it was painted up like Earnhardt's blue and yellow
Yeah.
car, and I didn't care for it really at first until I drove it, and that car was the one was saying to you as soon as you sat in it, "What are you doing?
Yeah.
Let's go."
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've had race cars. Nobody ever gets them all the time that are that way.
Right.
He's had several of them.
The more you drive them, the better they go.
And it's
Yeah.
still saying,
more. Yeah.
More.
let's
Lots
go.
more.
Yeah.
You know, when the car's ahead of the guy in the seat,
It's a good
you
point.
almost
Yeah.
can't do wrong.
Yeah.
That's a good point. There's not many. You don't get that many
You don't
times.
get
That,
that many,
that
yeah.
old Bush car,
Yeah.
this Leo Lever car, that Nutting put that snout on, who knows, it'd been 10 million laps somewhere.
Yeah.
And when
Wisconsin.
we got it, when we got it,
Yeah.
we was testing later that summer, and that's when I got to drive it. Just during the week we owned the place. We could go out on the track
Yeah,
whenever
right.
we wanted. And I drove it, and I said, I could drive it within less than a tenth of what he could go. It makes sense. I had some racing stuff experience, but we had a kid that was helping us, Darby Ludden, right from Unity. Never been in the car before, and he drove that Leo Lever car out on the track, and he could go within 0.2 of a second of fast as
Right.
Dad could go.
It had to be a hell of
Oh,
a.
And it's
hell of a
like-
rig.
Nutting's pretty clever. I mean, I don't know. You said the car was rough, but Nutting's always been a clever
Yeah,
guy.
but the car just told you,
Yeah. What
Let's
it
go.
was going to do.
let's go. And ended up to prove for that cars to get the proof in the pudding. We had it. We never owned it. We lost the motor, which was just parts anyway. Well, anyway, that car ended up setting, and then when Dick Belisle come on the scene in racing, he never raced it before, and he won an Enduro in Unity and a Camaro, and then he jumped right up and he started racing, and he ended up because Belisle is Joel Tozia's brother-in-law.
Brother-in-law, yeah.
So Belisle ended up with that Leo Lever car later a couple of years after that, and Dick will tell you the same thing.
Just the way it went.
That car just, when you put it in gear to go, it was already ahead of you.
Yeah, Dick did pretty well for not having a lot of experience.
That's what
Very
I'm
well.
getting at.
Yeah.
That's what
Very good,
this
yeah.
car was, for a starter, this car was right on the money because it did all the work.
But I've had 4 or 5 of them, and this old car that I got from Whitlock, that's been the same way.
Same car you got in the garage. now,
Same
yeah.
car.
Well, Peter knows about this Lever car because that had Chevelle spindles.
Yep.
All that same stuff and all them Bush cars,
Yeah.
sportsman cars that you raced
Yeah,
in
they
the
had
South.
like Franklin spindles and stuff.
Yeah,
on
it
them
was
back
all
then.
cast,
Yeah.
all
Oh, yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
GM engineering that's what was making
That's
it right.
Well, the original Franklin stuff was a 3/4 ton
Yeah.
truck spindle,
Truck spindle.
Yeah.
machine to fit the
Yeah.
brake drums and stuff. So an hour doesn't do justice on you guys, but I want to go over some stuff here. It just doesn't.
I
You
know.
we haven't even touched anything I've written down.
I know.
And but I just want I want to something we started doing a while ago, and McCabe was phenomenal on these stats, and St. Clair was too, but you guys surpassed them. And we're going to go. You've 563 documented career events, 396 extra distance events, 141 feature wins, 256 top threes. That's 45%. That's staggering, Ralph.
Yeah.
294 top fives, 52%. 350 top tens. That's 62%. That's insane. I know you probably didn't. I know you did well. You guys
Yeah,
obviously,
yeah,
but you don't.
yeah.
Those are facts because when you don't win, you forget the rest of it. You know?
Yeah,
usually.
but
Those numbers.
to me, like a lot of them numbers, I might have been just not
Yeah.
old enough to even know. But them other percentages, you should say why behind them, because that's what gets me. Well, why is it that? Why isn't it? You know, a lot of them was the reason it was a second or a third was because something happened.
Well, yeah, but
You know,
listen,
that's
when you're trying to race successful, you got to me. You race for champ. You guys won a lot of championships, moving around. When you can't win, to win a championship, you can't be 20th when you don't win.
no, right.
You've got to be. I hear what you're
You
saying.
got to be in
and
the
I
hunt,
understand-
but I mean,
understand.
in my mind,
Yeah, and I respect
I,
that. Yeah.
I could take them other numbers. I'd trade them for.
Oh, I bet you
know,
would. I mean, we all would.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
But I think that's a tribute to everything because there's days when people are just better. You know,
Oh, yeah,
and,
yeah,
and you can't be 10th that day.
No,
So, Ralph, you started NEPSA. That was a pretty big tour and successful a while. Do you want to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, yeah. We started that because they changed the racing and went back to what I think they called it realistic racing.
They did.
And
they did at Unity.
they said you can't have these cars anymore. So I said, well, that's what I got. So I want to go racing. There ain't no place, so let's figure it out.
not NEPSA, not that realistic racing. That was
Was
way
Bob
early.
Knowles
Realistic
about
racing, that was
way
76.
early.
They
Yeah.
changed that at Unity and Bangor. They all kind of
That was about
said this
seven-
is what we're going to race.
About 76.
So we didn't have
yeah.
no place to race our cars.
Yeah,
So I said,
the
so
NEPSA thing. That was
NEPSA.
after Curly had
Yeah.
So you-
got out of it.
yeah,
Yeah, because they were still NASCAR North then.
right.
Old NASCAR North. Curly hadn't
Yeah.
gone to ACT.
Curly hadn't
yet.
gone.
Right,
Right.
right.
So I thought you started NEPSA.
That was
after,
in '96. NEPSA
NEPSA.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
after ATC, ACT, or whatever the hell.
Right, because ACT and Bush North, they split it in '86,
Yes.
and then '87, and then that's when the '87 invite to Wiscasset with the old Lloyd Gilly 39. We went there as
We won that race.
Yeah.
invitational,
Yeah.
and
But that is, we started that NEPSA
That was
because
in
we had no
96.
place to race
right.
with these rules. So when I got on the telephone and called around and got a bunch of guys together, and like Gary Smith and Mike Rowe, we went and had a meeting down in Lewis, somewhere down next to Oxford, and there was 6 or 8 guys showed up there. And we picked up 2 or 3 from there and picked up wherever. So we had 10 or a dozen touring guys. to
This
go
is the
for
NEPSA
for
conversation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it would have been in '96. So I don't know if ISPC was
That was
before
right.
that or
Yeah, that was
the Randy Black had a series.
Yeah,
and
I don't
then
know anything about
right.
that. I wasn't.
ISPC.
That was all at the same time.
International something. He
Yeah.
was, yeah.
ISPC.
And that went to Canada because the Nova Scotia woman took over ISPC, then it fizzled. And
But it was the same thing
idea.
as NEPSA. It was
NEPSA was
our pro stock car that
and
we
we
needed
won
a place
that,
to race.
and we
You won it a
raced
couple
that.
times.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. We raced there, and I we
96
was
and
running. I was
97.
renting
Exactly.
racetracks. I rented.
Canaan.
They wouldn't let us in to racetracks like any other racetracks. I tried to get in Beech Ridge, tried to get in Oxford, tried to get in here.
Were they
We could
loyal-
race in Unity, but they didn't want that.
Were they being loyal to Curly or something?
Yeah, whatever they
probably.
was. So anyway, so I rented Canaan and somewhere else. We went to Canaan 2 or 3 times, and
Go to White Mountain.
I don't think so. Went to Canaan. I can't remember now where we. Did I own Caribou then when we went there? I believe so. And anyway, we was going as
Yeah,
you
we
know,
went to
12
we
or
went to
15
Caribou,
guys.
we went to
And then they started complaining that I was winning too much, and I needed to win because I had to pay the $3,000 or $4,000 to pay the rent to the guy that owned the racetrack. And so, like at Canaan, if the race was over, I had to pay this guy, you know,
Yeah.
for the racetrack. And when it got all said and done, them guys all got paid, and I got paid, but my pay went to my wife to pay the guy for the racetrack. And so anyway, but it was like, we did that until they thought that I was too fast or whatever. So I said, okay, so I turned it over to them guys. Said,
Who'd
guys
you
run."
turn it over to?
I think Gary Smith.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Gary, and he did a good job with it. And but he, you know, got a business to run, you know, along with that.
Yeah,
And
he's a good guy.
But there was a, you know, we
yeah,
went.
that must have been the
I went to
ISBC was
Mominee.
after that, and then it turned. And then Mayberry started his series.
Right, and Mayberry started the series. I tried to get Mayberry to take that over, and I said, "Well, here's a start. Here's the cars. That's what you want. Here's
yeah.
a start, and it's free. And we can make a deal so that you can even have the tech trailer. We can do it right." And so anyway, but he never did. And so yes, that went along another couple of years, and it kind of fizzled out. And but it was the right kind of a thing and the right thing to do at the right time.
Yeah.
And if we'd had just, what we needed was a title sponsor we didn't have.
Yeah,
And
that
if we'd
makes
have had
sense.
somebody with 10 grand, it would still been going.
You kept those race teams alive.
That's right.
Those
That's
pro
all it
stock
needed.
teams.
Yeah, guys.
So that Tom,
That's
so
right.
that Tom had something to work with.
That's right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, because other than that, the guys
Right.
are going to be sitting home.
Yeah.
There was
Because
no place
Curly
to race.
realized, but Curly realized that we was right. Because when he made the switch over, we went with the 39 to Wisconsin. That was a Curly race.
Yeah.
And he was trying to merge them because he didn't have no cars, and there was 10 or 12 of us, and he wanted them
Well,
cars.
that was, which
Yeah.
I talked to. This is fresh in my mind because we talked.
Yeah.
Kenny and I talked a couple weeks ago. That was in '87, and that was the first year that Curly. We all was there. In the meeting with the guy, the tour guy in Oxford, the guy, he's dead now. The guy that ran NASCAR.
Not Les Ritter.
No. Oh shit.
The big guy that used to play football there?
No.
Archie Black and all?
No. The guy, he's from the South. He said tour.
Robert Black?
No. But anyway, the meeting that they had in '87, early in the winter of between '86 and '87, when Curly split, Curly went with ACT was his crew, All Pro, and ASA,
ASA, yeah.
which was
Out west, yeah.
right. That was their little kind of. They never
Yeah.
really. They had some combination races,
Yeah.
but we never ran.
We
them.
didn't go.
Nashville was their big combination race.
Yeah,
It was
and
400 or something.
and Milwaukee.
Yeah. Milwaukee
Super
Mile.
Row
Yeah.
went this.
Yeah, Roe
some-
went to Milwaukee.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and some of them combination races we never did because it was too goddamn far away.
Yeah.
But that first year, see, Curly had switched all from your style car, steel body
Yeah.
Laughlin KLB
Yeah.
type car, to everybody, Crouch and all of them guys had to have a new coilover car with a V6, with a 9-to-1 V6, and Curly started out, and that would have been '87. He started out, and he didn't have enough cars to put on his show. So the Wiscasset race, whatever date it was, he invited Pro Stocks to come in. Stan was the tech man, and the rule was Pro Stock, and we was running at Lee on Friday night or wherever we could, not really like a wild child or something, but we was racing where we could.
Yeah.
And you never really had the rules never really was any different, so you could kind of run where you wanted to. And so they invited that Saturday night Pro Stock type car in to the race at Wiscasset, to the ACT race. Only rule was you had to have a flat top piston, 2-barrel carburetor, and you had to start last because you was invited.
Any two-barrel? Like a 600?
No,
650
no,
or
no,
500?
500.
500, just a 44-12.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody ever. I've seen a bunch of them weird looking things, but I don't. There's nothing wrong with 44-12.
No.
You know, and now with as in 40 years later or whatever, it's that two-barrel carburetor still.
Oh,
These
yeah.
kids,
Still
these
long
kids are
range.
racing.
Oh, yeah.
These kids are racing plow truck motors.
Hell, those four cylinders they run, they got a
Yeah.
500 on them.
Yep.
So that race, they invited. We went, and I'm sure they must have been 10 other pro stocks
Yeah,
there.
probably.
I only know of one,
Yeah.
and that was him. And he started dead last, and he passed every one of them on the bottom. They didn't even know where there was a racetrack.
Yeah.
That was a pretty good car, wasn't it? I remember.
That was
Yeah, that was the
a
orange
reserve car.
39.
Yeah, stock
the one
Camaro
that
snout
Gilly
straight.
bought.
That had torque
Yeah.
tube? Is
Had
that
a torque
It
car,
talked
yeah.
to him. Yep.
Yeah.
Homemade one. Stanley made the whole thing. It was.
Yep.
I drove Marty's car up there one night, and it had
Yeah.
that on.
Yeah,
What the
that
hell,
would have been
really?
a sister to it.
Yeah.
Not a direct sister, but
Right.
damn
Yeah.
close. Yeah.
Yeah, those cars went well.
Yeah. Yeah, that worked good.
Bobby, we haven't forgotten about you.
Nope, he's there.
Tell me a little bit about your time with Ricky Craven. I don't know how many people listening in the audience will knows you spent so much time with him, and that you actually were on the payroll at E.J. Prescott's working on race cars.
Yeah. Started when he was 14. I started helping him, and he was racing Unity with a street stock actually.
Yeah.
And then he kept every year or two we'd change cars, and finally Stan Reserve came along and built him a sportsman car.
That Nova.
But he said he wouldn't. Yeah, he said he wouldn't build it unless I was the crew chief. Well, at the time I was more or less getting out of racing, so I said, well, all right, I'll help you another year or two. So I helped him right up till he moved to New Hampshire when he was 22. And the last
Wow,
three years,
didn't
I
realize
think,
that would-
last 3 years we was with Prescott racing, and that was a good time.
So going back to the Stan car, that was a Nova. It won a lot of races.
Well,
Didn't
that
it?
was actually a Pontiac.
Was it?
But yeah,
Yeah.
same thing.
Greg bought it
Yeah.
from him and won a ton of races too.
No, Greg had his own car that Stanley had built before that.
I thought
Yeah.
it was a Craven car.
No. You
No
can-
kidding.
I'll probably get hold of that, but I'm pretty sure that car that Greg had. See, Greg's my age. Ricky's 3 years younger. So that car that Greg had was a Charger car in Unity, and that was I don't know how many he won every week.
He
Yeah, I
won.
But
remember
that was
that.
the first car that was ever built.
Yeah.
That
Everybody tried
that
to say it was a car.
built to from bumper to bumper, and that was Greg's car. And
It was fast.
then when Ricky's a little younger than I am, so when Ricky started, he had that old giant Impala or something for a little while. This was still with a 6-cylinder motor in it.
Yeah.
And then Stanley built the new car,
Yeah.
and that's when that was like
believe
another
that
newer
was a
version
6-cylinder,
of
yeah.
what Greg Vino had, and it was good.
Nice.
You know.
Did you work on his Bush North stuff too?
No, I didn't. That's when he moved to New Hampshire. That was after.
Okay, you said that. So you basically ACT stuff.
Yeah.
When he was driving for them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he worked on the V6 stuff.
Yeah,
them
V6,
guys.
yeah, we ran mostly the V6. It was better than the V8
Yeah.
when we ran. The Buick V6 was good.
I
Yeah,
only
we,
ran-
we
Well,
went
when
we
he
went to
first-
Tennessee twice and raced.
Yeah, he
there.
hauled us to
Yeah.
Nashville once.
Yeah.
Yeah, we went down there and he went out and practiced. Car wasn't that good. And he come in and a guy from New York there, Steve Hibbert, and I was standing there talking. And they went to a driver's meeting. And Steve said, "What do you think you're going to do?" I said, "Well, I don't know. I think we need to do something." So we changed the right rear spring. I moved some lead around. Ricky went out on the racetrack. They had one more practice, and the thing flew. Well, Darrell Waltrip was parked a couple of cars from us. He come over and wanted to know what the hell. Asked Ricky, "What the hell did you do to that car?" Ricky said, "I don't know. Ask him." Well, I didn't want to tell him, but Ricky looked at me and said, "Oh, go ahead and tell him." So I told Darrell, and they're throwing springs and moving weight, and went out, and then they both was fast. Ricky followed him the whole race, right up, I think, about 4 laps to go. And we pitted and did tires. Them guys that come out of there with new tires, they go by us like we were stopped.
Yeah.
20 laps later, you'd go by them, another 20 laps or so, you'd lap them. And anyhow, they about 4 or 5 laps to go, they had a wreck. Well, Ricky got on the brakes. Darrell was smart enough, he didn't put his brakes on. He drove through it.
Yeah.
And him and the first 2 cars, there's 2 cars in front of him. And so that was the end of the race. Well, Darrell, they come in and put tires on them. Other guys didn't have no brakes. They couldn't even come in the pit. So when they started the race, Darrell just drove by him and won. And
Unreal.
Ricky was finished seventh, 4 laps down, and still finished seventh.
Yeah, a lot of learning curve that day,
Oh,
wasn't
yeah.
it?
Big
Yeah,
learn.
yeah. We went back the next year, but the car ran all right. But I can't really remember. I think he got crashed early, if I remember right.
Yeah.
A lot of career. So, Ralph, I don't know how many people know you. You didn't own Spud too. You owned a track in Canada, though, right?
No, I own Spud too.
I didn't know you bought that. I thought I know
Oh,
you
yeah.
managed. Well, let's
I
back
bought
up.
that. I bought that from.
He managed it in the
I
60s,
did in the
69.
'60s for no.
Yeah, I was up
What
there.
brought
you
that
were-
on? I mean, you're
Well,
racing.
he hired me to go up there and run it for him. He had nobody to run it.
but I
And he
mean,
couldn't
you're
get no
racing
race cars.
regular. I mean,
I was racing and doing.
We was
Ellis
winning too
and
many
everything
races.
else, and he come along and he said, "Look, I need somebody to come do this." And I took a look at it, and we made some deals there, and I was looking at something for a career for longevity
yeah,
for a long time.
sure.
And anyway, that part of it didn't work out. So I didn't go back after the second year. And but Bob hired Blaine
Blaine-
Littlefield.
Yeah, I-
And he ran it. He went up there. Him and Norma ran it for 2 or 3 years after that. But Randy Preston and Bill down to Beach Ridge. Bill, he raced with us, ACT.
Yeah, I know. I can't think of it.
What the hell
Bill.
is his name? Anyway, these two guys, Randy Preston and Bill something, his father or father-in-law or whatever was stationed in Limestone or something anyway, and they bought Spud, and they tried to run it, and they had 3 or 4 races, and they was losing their shirt and whatever. Doing it the wrong time of year and doing whatever they wasn't doing it anywhere near right. So anyway, but I knew about how it needed to be run, and I made money up there, and not necessarily for me, but for the thing, and it became available from these guys, and I had the money to buy it, so I bought it, and I ran it that year, brought it back, and I had pretty successful. I had a sponsor for each and every race,
Yeah,
each and every
nice.
heat race.
Wow,
Each
nice.
and everything I had a sponsor for. And I had a deal whereas nobody had to buy a ticket, as I tied up with Kluge Auto Parts, which he had 5 stores up there. And every time you as a garage would go into Kluge's Auto Parts, he'd give you a certificate. And that's just so many certificates, then you turn them 5 certificates in and you got a free pass to the races.
Wow.
And all these people were going into the auto parts and getting them. And these things are coming in left and right every weekend, these certificates. And so I didn't even really have to sell tickets in the ticket office anyway, because they're coming in. And they walk in, they give you the ticket.
So everybody's making out on that deal.
Everybody made a hell of a
You,
deal.
the track,
I did the same
the
thing in
fan,
Montmagny.
the parts business. Yeah.
And I did the same thing in Montmagny, not with a parts store, but other people,
Yeah.
restaurants and stuff. And because it'll work for any business. And anyway, I ran it those 2 or 3 years. Then I turned around and I sold it. And I sold it to Greg Vino. And Greg was there. I wound up with it back, and then I turned around. I can't remember now whether I may have not had to take it back. Maybe Greg turned around. Probably Greg sold it to the guy that's up there now.
They've been working hard on it.
Yeah,
it
I
going.
think. And so anyway, but they've gone up there. He's got a new investor to come in with him.
They said they spent $1 million.
They spent a lot,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's nice. I haven't been
Yeah.
out, but they say it's nice, and they're doing, multi-sports things.
Oh yeah,
there.
year round.
Year-round deal, and I think that's what it needs. But I owned that for a while, and then I bought Montmagny. This guy, he was a tech man at Montmagny, Andre Ford, and he's a good friend of ours. And he called me up and he said, "You want to buy this racetrack?" And I said, "No." And I said, in Canada, even less. And he said, listen, that's going to go to auction, and it's going to be cheap. And this is a brand new, three years old, $2.5 million I spent. And I said, well, anyway. So I took a trip, and we'd raced up there, and I took another trip up there, and looked it all over, thought it all over. So, and it was in the bankruptcy. They call it the Scenic.
Yep.
In Canada, it's called a Scenic. So I went and had a meeting with them, and they said, well, what you got to do, you got to make an offer. And I said, okay, I'll make you an offer. And I said, but this offer is going to have contingencies. So I hired a lawyer right there in Walmany, and I said, this is what I want. And I said, I want these contingencies right here. And so when we put the package all together, went back to the Scenic in Quebec City again, and this lawyer guy was with me, and I wound up making the offer. They accepted it, and with my conditions and the whole 9 yards. Well, when I got all said and done, I bought it for like 35 cents on a dollar.
Nice.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it was worth it.
And
Guy gave you good advice.
10 years, and 10 years later, Ann Array worked for me for 9 of those 10 years. One season he got a tiff going, he went back to Florida, and but Andre's still up there. And the people that I sold it to, they're doing great.
Good.
And they put a road course in, and
you
whatever.
said
It's a
that.
beautiful place. And it's right up on a mountain, looking right over the St. Lawrence River. It's beautiful.
Unfortunately, we're out of time.
Oh.
I feel we haven't even touched anything on you guys. If Ricky ever comes through town again,
He was in town a week or so ago.
He was
well,
in
I hate to
town
bother
last
him, he's
weekend.
always busy, but another session with him and you guys again. I got all kinds of stuff
Oh,
here.
that's
I
great.
you know, I mean, that 60 years we were talking about covered a lot of territory, Ronnie.
A lot of
I
time.
know.
Yeah, Ricky, I bet he'd like that. He'd get together with Bob and whatever. I think he'd like that.
I think he would too.
Oh yeah, because
So-
I mean, he ain't looking at racing, or anything else, and he's like, wow, he's selling Corvettes and
Yeah.
fancy cars down there in North
Yeah,
Carolina.
he's wide open.
Yeah, I guess so.
So at this stage, we usually ask you as individuals. I know the start of this was a long time ago, Ralph. Who would you like to thank, other than your wife for tolerating it all?
Everybody and anybody that ever helped me, and there's only 1,000 names.
Yeah, I bet.
And I can't, if I start throwing names out, I'm gonna hurt somebody's feelings.
Yeah.
But I'm thanking them all because
Yeah.
that's just the way it is. And, I mean, we have another 2 or 3 guys that are part of this nucleus when we was racing, and that's gonna be like Phil Badger and Lloyd Moore, and he's passed, and Roger Doyon, and Roger's working, so I know he couldn't come. And, but those guys were part of it, real into it.
Well, maybe we'll get to do another one, like I said, and celebrate it. How about you, Bobby?
Well, I don't know.
You need to thank Ralph for bringing you
I've been
into
around
this.
so long, I don't know. I got to know so many people, and I know I went down to Downton with Ricky there one time, and I walked, when he was racing Bush last year, he run it, and whatever the hell it was then. And I walked around pit, and all these guys kept coming out and shaking my hand. Said,
Nice.
about time you showed up. I said, I'm just visiting. They said, you need to stay. And I never could remember people's names, and I knew them all, but I couldn't tell you the names. But I walked around that where the Bush cars was there, and there was at least 8 of them come out and shook my hand.
Yeah.
And there was some more that waved at me that I knew. And I said, oh, these guys, you go and race, and they're on the other team, and you see them.
Yeah.
And then next year they ain't there. You don't think nothing of it. But they all went south.
Yeah.
Whole bunch of them went south.
Well, they liked it when the Yankees showed up down there.
Yeah.
How about you, Ron?
Oh, not to go back quite so far health-wise as Dad and Bob, but in the nucleus of early ACT, all the way through to 3 consecutive 250s, every set of hands was worth it. Whether it was the 2 young fellas that grew up just in unity that helped for when they was in high school, the Shaw boys, or Brian Whitney, which
Yeah,
is
Brian
Dick
Whitney.
and Donna's grandson.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
he's just one of my best friends now, still. You know, only he ain't a kid anymore.
Yeah.
You know, Mark Cleaves was in a tight deal. He's an electrician, so he's, you know, a professional.
Yeah.
And he's one in which I not only had just him, but when I said this is what needed to be done, there was no double checking him. I didn't need to. You know, Timmy Pereira, the same
yeah.
way. Timmy he's my brother-in-law, and we've got a little racing vintage sled stuff, and you know, Timmy was really he liked the good. He was the guy that. Well, let's put a little paint on that now first.
Make it look
Thing
nice
before you get
outside.
it home. You know, let's get a little paint on that. And that, no, don't worry about that paint. We're gonna take it apart. You know, but with his help, because he's game for anything.
Yeah.
You know, Todd Hamlin at one time was such good help.
Yeah.
You know, a set of hands and
Dale Brown.
always in your back.
Yeah.
You know, Dale Brown, a kid from Ontario, he helped us for a while. He was good hands.
I tell people, even though we don't realize it at the time because we're struggling trying to make it, like
Yeah.
you said, no money, we were wealthy in people. We just
That's
don't
right,
realize.
exactly.
Now that
No,
you look back and
not
say,
all to once.
Yeah.
As
Yeah.
the time
Yeah.
goes
Yeah.
on,
we
you
had a
know.
lot of wealth and dedicated people like
Yeah,
you. And,
that's right.
you
Well,
know,
just like the kid that I talked about, Darby Ludden from right in
Yeah.
town, he raced with us forever. Back, you remember a month ago, I asked her about a race that went on in Unity. After I met with Kenny, I was looking on the internet, and the Dan Wolf 100, that somebody said something, because I've had a little memory issue here recently just because of health reasons, but they said, yeah, Paul Richardson, and you and Paul Richardson was in a fight. And I said, I didn't remember that, but then I got to thinking about it. Paul Richardson was wanting to fight with me, and if I remember right, I was taking the carburetor off the motor in tech, and that Darby Ludden, he took care of Paul Richardson, and they was rolling in the mud,
Yep.
and Richardson's wife was kicking Darby because I didn't remember it all, but I haven't talked to Darby for years, but I had to ask him, and he said, oh, I remember that.
had your back for sure.
And then the last quote I said, you can look it in my phone because it was all in a text. I said, what triggered that? And they wasn't sure if it was my mouth that triggered the fight or not, but it could have been.
It's hard to believe.
Yeah.
I mean, I probably-
All right.
Richardson was explosive too.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for making the trip.
Yeah,
You guys,
this
hell
is-
of a career, incredible careers, incredible history. I don't know if any of it will ever be duplicated,
No,
especially around here, but thank you very much for taking the time. Like I said, we haven't scratched the surface on you guys. There's so much more. Hopefully something happens. Like I said, the Ricky deal, maybe we can do another one.
never know.
But thank all three of you for taking the time. You too, Ken.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. We're out of here.
Yeah.